Hey everybody, Jeremy Siskind here. I'm the author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano and the 2 books of the Jazz Piano Fundamentals series. And this is a second part of a 2-parter. So I would totally recommend that you watch the first part first. I will do some reminding for those of you who watched the first part and forgot about some things. So we're talking about some of the exercises and activities associated with the pedagogues Abby Whiteside and Sophia Rosoff. They're really important to us in the jazz world because Sophia in particular taught a lot of jazz pianists, including Barry Harris and Fred Hersch, 2 real pillars of different schools of jazz thinking and learning. So two out of the I don't know how many biggest jazz teachers and players of recent years studied with Sophia, and 2 of the pianists with the most beautiful sounds at the instrument. So it kind of tells us that we need to take this seriously. So we talked about starting at the core of the music, which is the aural image, how you hear the music in your head, and then the emotional rhythm, how you kind of ice skate and create a sense of momentum through this music rather than marching. We talked about phrase-wise thinking versus note-wise thinking, and I showed you the technique of outlining, which for my money is probably like the most important technique in this tradition to get from phrase-wise thinking to note-wise thinking. So if you missed that video, there's lots of great stuff in there, but we're going to continue, and I'm going to show you a handful of other exercises that I would do with Sophia in her studio. Yeah, let's dive in. So another thing that we did in order to get to that emotional rhythm is tapping. And probably a lot of you have done different kinds of tapping as you've learned different pieces of music. But in order to create an emotional rhythm, you need to tap emotionally. And maybe that sounds silly, but consider that, percussionists and drummers do this all their lives, right? Like their whole idea is to create emotion through rhythm. So Sophia says the point of tapping is the rhythm, so that you really hear everything and feel everything. The best thing to do to learn music is to tap and get the rhythm and to sing and hear the sounds. So here's an example of one of the Ravel Valse Triste et Sentimentale, which the more I think about it is kind of a funny name because they're not too sad or sentimental at all, especially this first one. By the way, I recommend these to anybody who wants a great classical piece to learn a lot of great jazz voicings. They're such cool pieces. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, if we were learning this, one way that we could learn it would be to start by tapping. Now, a lot of teachers and learners, as they tap, will kind of simply tap for the rhythm. Technically correct, but again, there's this difference here between rhythm, metronomic rhythm, and emotional rhythm, right? If we have metronomic rhythm, we're not going to move anybody. We might get the gig, but we're not really going to create something memorable. So we want to tap with emotional rhythm. And we want to feel a difference in the body, right? So just like we wouldn't want to play this like this, we want to engage the entire body as we tap. And we want to feel that kind of momentum. How are we bouncing off? I'm not necessarily trying to play any particular notes as I tap. I'm not playing anything with my fingers. I'm just kind of treating my 5 fingers as a drumstick. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to create those accents. I'm trying to bounce off. And another layer that you can try is tapping with your heels. And what Sophia would often have us do is to tap the right hand part with our hands and the left hand part with our heels. So I'm going to put this down and I'm going to tap. Because we do want to get that lower body activated as well. So if you haven't already, do this with me. We'll go a little slower because it's kind of a fast piece. Do, 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 ba, sha, ta, ta, ah. 1, 2, 3, 2, ready, all right, not bad. And then we can come back to the piano and see if we can engage that same rhythmic vivacity, that same rhythmic vitality at the piano. Right? And it doesn't just have to be for really percussive sections. We could also do the same kind of tapping. These are the next 4 measures of that same piece, but it gets into a more kind of romantic vein. And here, I am going to tap the bottom part with my feet, with my heels, and the top part with my hands. So let's do the hands first. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. One more time. Think about what the phrases are. As I play my phrases, notice, so it's so different than if I'm just tapping the rhythm. I could sit here tapping, right? Instead. I'm even coming up from my butt. My whole body is active here. So one more time with the hands, make some phrases as you play this. As you tap it. 1, ready, and. And you're going to tap differently depending on how you hear it, of course. So you need to kind of figure that out as you're going. How loud are these accents? Right? How much are you recognizing these 2-note slurs? And now with the heels, we'll tap the left hand. So 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. One more time. I don't know if you can hear my heels. I'll be obnoxiously loud just in case. 1, ready, and. Good. I hope you're noticing that crescendo. But we already have this feeling of these kind of every 2-beat taps, so it already kind of has this feeling of anticipation. All right, put them together. Hands and heels. 1, ready, and. One more time. This is probably the strangest thing anybody's done on a YouTube channel. So here we go. 1, ready, and. Crescendo. All right. So that's a really whole-bodied experience of tapping. And as you go to play this passage now, you got some things to figure out. You got fingering to figure out. You got notes to figure out. I am not debating that, but you have an emotional core. One more time. Okay. And I just don't get that upset when I miss notes, as long as the emotion has that feeling of ice skating, as long as it has that beautiful momentum. I'm not going to make us do this together, but this is especially great for contrapuntal music. And Sophia would have us tap a Bach fugue like this one here, and we would use the left hand for the alto, which I believe that ends up being the alto here, the right hand for the soprano, and then once the bass comes in, which looks like it does here, we would use our heels. And of course, if it's a 4-voice and there's tenor and a bass, we use our right heel for the tenor, left heel for the bass. So you really have to be recognizing the individual identity of these different voices in order to tap them with different limbs. Splashing is a beautiful way to get from tapping onto the piano. Okay, so I'll let Sophia explain it. Her direction is to splash out a passage with any notes, as though you heard the music in a dream, but were left with the feeling of the rhythm of it. You couldn't remember the sound, but could remember the rhythm. It gets the main core of the music into you because it's expressing the rhythm and finding what you want to hear. Okay, so this is so reverse to our Western way of thinking and teaching, where we start with the notes. We need to have correct notes, and then maybe we think about what's the correct rhythm, what's the correct expression. So if we come back to the same Ravel example, we're basically going to be tapping, but at the piano. So, and making sure that we get the sounds that we want. Now, I think sometimes it can be nice to think about splashing on like a 1 to 5 scale, with a 1 being like, I'm not even thinking at all about the notes. So, you know, I'm sorry if that's like overloading your speaker system there. My apologies. And by the time we get to number 5, we're mostly trying to get the right notes. But we're not necessarily torturing ourselves about them. And a number 2 would be like, okay, I'm gonna try to get like the right bottom and top note maybe, or like just the right bottom. Like I'm gonna try to generally get it. And number 3, okay, I kind of see that. You know, I'm kind of trying to get the right chord. So there can be maybe different degrees of splashing. Here's, you know, an example which I think we usually wouldn't think of as splashing, but the challenge is to make this beautiful and express without any of the right notes, like as though it were a weird modern piece, but it was really haunting and beautiful. So this is Chopin, and so, you know, here's the right notes. Instead, I'm going to play these same figures and try to really capture the feeling, but with none of the right, without worrying about the right notes. How beautiful can I make it? On some of the right notes there. And if I were actually practicing this, I'd go back, I took way too big of a pause right there. So I'd go back and I would try to figure it out. How do I want this to sound? So that once I put in the right notes, all the music's already right there. Clustering is something that we often use in the Whiteside Rosoff tradition for busier, more fingery passages. Here's what Sophia says. By playing all the notes of, let's say, a first beat together, you could hear almost all the music. You have to do only the clusters that fit your hand. And when you do that, you can hear the outline, the core of the music. And you get to hear the music that way. And the hand gets to the best position to play it. So what do you actually do in terms of this clustering? You organize your chords into hand positions or into beats depending on your preference and the passage. You play them in time musically, and then you repeat those clusters with the original rhythm. So here's a Mozart passage. Okay. So let's say you're having trouble making it really sound brilliant the way that you want. What we're going to do is we're going to take clusters. These are based on hand position, right? I can fit all of these into my hand. Notice it's not a coincidence that these all start on 1, because that's where we change hand position. Okay. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but just like our outline, we want to play this as musically as we possibly can. We want to find the music here before we do anything else. So I kind of like that. Because what we're doing is we're finding our gesture. What are we going to be doing with our torso, our arm, our shoulder, our elbow? So we're finding that before we figure out what we're doing with our fingers. And now we're going to repeat it. And so we're basically going to repeat each cluster once for every note in the cluster so that we have the same rhythm between the clusters and the repetitions. I don't know if that made sense. We have the same rhythm between the original and the clusters. And now we want to really, again, find the shape. So if I want to make a crescendo, and then I have to decide, do I want it to be, or do I want it to be, I think I like the second one better. Okay, so we're really de-emphasizing the roll of fingers there, and then we open it back up to the original. Ah, it feels so easy. Super fun. Here's another little example. We have these awful thirds. And so I'm going to put those in a cluster. I'm hearing things in the music that I didn't hear before. I'm really hearing that really basic melody. And then what's the next one? Don't be afraid of the dissonance, right? Okay, and then we're going to repeat it. This helps me get to think about where I'm aiming for, like what is the directionality? Because otherwise it might go da, but I'm trying to really aim for that downbeat. All right, and then I separate it back out. I'm not claiming this will magically make your thirds necessarily better, but it will allow you to prioritize the musicality of it, even when you're struggling with thirds, potentially. In one of my first lessons with Fred Hersch, he showed me, a specific application of this to a jazz piece. I know a lot of you out there are jazz pianists, so we were working on Donna Lee, and Fred said, the way to play Donna Lee is, I think I've shared this on the channel before, but basically taking each hand position, which actually coordinate pretty well to every 2 beats here, if you want to see this bigger. Okay, and then how beautiful can we make that? And press it down. And then we repeat it. Try to repeat it without getting too tense in your hands. And then open it back up. And you can do that with the whole tune of Donna Lee. Find the different hand positions, put them in a cluster, practice repeating them. And if you are anything like me, you'll find that the flow of it is easier and more satisfying after this exercise. Swaying. So I love this story. This is from one of Abby Whiteside's books. And the story is that a student came in and was playing this little prelude in C minor. And was playing all the notes just fine, but the music wasn't really necessarily happening. So what did Abby Whiteside have this student do? First thing is to block out the harmony. And this is a pretty smart thing to do, not necessarily particular to the Abby Whiteside tradition. Okay, so now I'm playing triads in both hands. Instead of the figuration. Now the next thing that she did is a little bit more unique. So she had the student play repeat the triads in rhythm. And because the left hand basically plays on beats 1 and beat 3, she had the left hand on 1 and beat and 3, and then the right hand's most active on 1 and 2. So it's something like. Okay. And then the coup de grace. If you notice, you have two sitting bones, right? If you're on your piano bench or on a chair right now, you should be able to feel that you've got two sitting bones, one under each cheek. And so in order to feel this music more in the way that Bach intended, Abby asked the student to sit on their right sitting bone or to lean on their right sitting bone for beats 1 and 2 and to their left for beat 3. So let's all do that together. Here's the next weirdest thing that was ever done on YouTube. So right, right, left, right, right, left, right, right. Yeah. So this actually gets your body feeling the music instead of just standing there stationary. And then you put it together. And notice it's not putting the rhythm in the fingers. Whenever we put the rhythm in the fingers, if we miss a note, then we lose the rhythm. And that's really what we don't want to do ultimately, right? So then. So this gets us into this feeling of a phrase rather than this really digital kind of playing. Now I'm just kind of filling in with how my body moves. So pretty amazing. I love it. This is kind of funny. One thing that Sophia would have us do, and I think this relates to this concept of leaning, it involves getting the rhythm in the body and low in the body, is she would have us bend down kind of to almost a squat and then walk the rhythm of our piece. So, so I'm tapping it now on my chest and I'm literally kind of walking in this weird squat that gets my center of gravity nice and low. So, and so what that does for me is it gets the rhythm again into my body and out of my fingers. It gets it really nice down low, and it encourages me to get my lower body involved. Hand reversal was something that Sophia says that she invented to help a dyslexic student. And if you're having trouble coordinating between hands or getting a good balance between hands, this is going to be a really good exercise. Here's what Sophia says. We reverse hands because one usually listens to the melody line and doesn't hear the accompanying line. And also because if they're right-handed, they'll listen to their right hand and don't hear the left-hand part so much. So if you reverse it and play the left-hand part with the right hand at the top of the piano, and play the right-hand part with the left hand at the bottom of the piano, that will make one whole statement because it gets each hand, right and left, as important part of a whole. You have to hear the whole thing. Okay, so here's an example. You guys are probably mostly familiar with this piece. So let's say I want to get my balance, my coordination a little bit better. First thing I would do is I would play the right hand part with both hands. Virtuosic piece, you might want to settle for playing a reduced version because you could spend a really long time playing, figure out the fingering for the left hand, for instance. Okay. And then I'm going to play the left hand part with both hands. And then I want to actually reverse it. And if you're at home near your piano, try this with me. It's kind of fun. By the way, you might have to kind of spread your hands out, put the left hand a little lower than you'd actually like. And as I now go ahead and put those hands back, I'm really hearing them both differently. I'm able to focus my attention in both directions on both hands a little bit better. I think this is the last thing I'm going to show you today, which is balancing an egg. And I'm sorry, I looked in my fridge. I don't have an egg with me today. But this was an activity that we did a lot in Sophia's studio. She says, to balance the egg, you have to focus very well and learn that the periphery must not be heavy, that the hands and forearm must not slam down the keys. The whole of you is balancing the egg, but the hands are light, or they'll bust the egg all over the carpet. So the idea with balancing an egg is that you want to take an egg, a raw egg, go to a flat surface. Carpet's usually easy, wood floor is harder, but maybe more rewarding. Put the egg in your hands and see if you can get it to stand on its end, like in the pictures here. And this simulates and shows you how your body actually wants to be at the piano. And usually I'm actually kind of kneeling on the ground. And so I've got all my weight in my torso. I'm really focused, but my fingers have to stay very, very light and agile. And ultimately, teaches us how we want our body to operate at the piano, with the extremities doing the light work and the balance and the power provided by the torso. And Sophia would sometimes say that we can, pretend that we're balancing the egg at the piano. We can kind of go to the piano and feel what it feels like to have those very light hands and very stable extremity. We can also pretend that we are the egg at the piano, that we have this kind of heavy yoke in us that wants to keep us up, and we have this kind of, this delicate, breakable, fragile shell. And that can also be a way to get this mental image of how we want to feel at the instrument. So thank you for watching, for those of you who did watch all the way through both parts. For more information, you can look at abbywhiteside.org, and there's a few books that she's written. And Abby Whiteside on piano playing, Indispensables of Piano Playing, and Mastering the Chopin Etudes. I know that the center, the Abby Whiteside Foundation, did a lot of work sending these to local libraries. They're hard to find in print. I don't think they're in print anymore, but if you check with your local library, you might be able to find them. So thank you very much for watching. If you like this, I talk about a lot of these concepts in Playing Solo Jazz Piano. If you loved these videos about Abby Whiteside, this might be a really fun book to have. If you're just looking to get into jazz, Jazz Piano Fundamentals are great books for you. And if you watched all the way to the end, huevos rancheros is going to be the word to put in the comments, because of course we were talking about eggs. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.